My name doesn't matter anymore. What matters is that I finally tell this story, out loud, before I go. If you're watching this, comment where in the world you're watching from. Bless your heart for listening. Maybe click that like button, not for me, but so more folks will hear what silence can do to a soul. I've carried this secret for over 70 years. It's heavy, child. Heavier than the Ohio snow that used to crush our roof in February. I grew up on a farm outside a small town called Maple Creek. Back then, in the 1950s, everything looked so perfect from the outside. White fences, church bells, mamas hanging laundry on lines that smelled of soap and wind. But inside our house, there was always a storm. My father was the thunder, and my mother, she was the fragile little window that kept trying to stay unbroken. On my 15th birthday, the sky was a dull gray. You know that kind of gray that smells like rain and sadness? That was the color of our kitchen that morning. Mama had baked me a cake, yellow with chocolate frosting, her hands shaking while she spread it with an old butter knife. I can still see her fingers trembling like bird wings. She whispered, "Happy birthday, baby." And I remember thinking she looked scared to even say it. That night changed everything. I won't go into the details. I can't. But what my father did shattered something inside me that never quite healed. It was like the world split in two, before that night, and after. And the next morning, Mama didn't wake up. He told the neighbors it was food poisoning. But I saw the way he looked at me when he said it, cold, satisfied, as if he'd just cleaned up a mess. I knew. Oh Lord, I knew. I was 15, and suddenly I was an orphan, even though one of my parents was still alive. After that, he turned our home into a prison. I wasn't allowed to go to school anymore. He said, "Books don't put food on the table." He'd send me to the fields at dawn, make me work till my fingers bled. If I cried, he'd say, "Tears are for the weak." If I stayed silent, he'd call me ungrateful. There was no right way to exist in that house. The air smelled of tobacco and rot, and every floorboard creaked like it was warning me to run. But I had nowhere to go. Sometimes I'd sit by the window late at night and whisper to Mama's ghost. "I miss you," I'd say. "I'm trying to be brave." And sometimes I'd swear I heard her humming, that same lullaby she used to sing when the wind howled through the cracks. That sound kept me alive, I think. 10 years. 10 long years I lived under that roof. You can't imagine what it does to a person to lose time like that. I wasn't a girl anymore. I was something else. Hollow, quiet, patient, waiting. Because, child, pain teaches you things. It teaches you to listen, not just with your ears, but with your whole body. You start to notice patterns, moods, footsteps. I could tell his mood by the sound of his boots hitting the porch. Some nights, I'd hide in the barn. Other nights, I'd pretend to sleep so he'd pass by my room. And every morning I'd tell myself, just survive this day. If you're still listening, please comment something, even a heart emoji, so I know I'm not just whispering into the dark. It's strange, telling all this now. My hands are old and veined, but when I talk about those years, I feel 15 again. Scared. Small. But still here. One winter, I remember waking up to the sound of him coughing in the kitchen. He was getting older too. His hair was turning white, and his temper got worse. He'd drink half a bottle of whiskey and talk to himself about how nobody respected him. I learned to nod, to agree, to survive. But deep down, I was planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just escape. It started with a letter. I wrote to a church in town, pretending to be someone else, a young woman looking for work. I used a fake name, sent it through a neighbor's mailbox when he wasn't looking. Weeks later I got a reply. The church needed someone to help with cleaning and kitchen work. I hid that letter under the loose floorboard beneath my bed for months. Every time he raised his voice, I'd touch that spot and remember. I had a future waiting, if I could just make it there alive. One night, the plan almost fell apart. He found the letter. He came storming into my room, waving it in my face, yelling words I still can't say. I thought he'd kill me. I remember the lamp falling, glass shattering, the smell of kerosene and fear. But then, he stopped. Just stared at me with this cold, empty look. He said, "You'll never leave me. You're just like your mother, weak." That word, weak, it burned something inside me. I decided right then I would leave. Even if it meant crawling through the mud, barefoot, with nothing but the clothes on my back. I waited until the first spring rain, when he was too drunk to notice me slipping out the door. The sky was black, but the air smelled clean, free. I walked for miles, the wet grass soaking my skirt, lightning flashing over the cornfields. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I couldn't go back. That was the first night I slept without fear. Now, sitting here 70 years later, my hands shaking, I think about that girl I was. And I wish I could hold her. I wish I could tell her she'd grow into a woman who'd learn to smile again. That she'd find kindness in strangers. That one day, she'd be the grandma sitting on her bed, telling the world the truth she buried for too long. If you're out there, watching, don't let silence win. Don't keep secrets that eat at your soul. Speak, even if your voice trembles. I'm proof that you can survive. You can live. You can even love again. Please like this if my story touches you. Leave a comment so I know I wasn't invisible all these years. Because after a lifetime of quiet, all I ever wanted was to be heard. The night I ran from that house, I didn't know if I was running toward life or death. Only that I was done being afraid. If you're still here listening, bless your heart. Sometimes I wonder why folks want to hear stories like mine. Maybe because pain makes people feel less alone. If that's you, please leave a little comment below, so I know I'm not just whispering into the wind again. The night I left that farm, I was 15 turning 16. My shoes were falling apart, and the rain soaked through my dress till it clung to me like second skin. But I didn't stop walking. I walked until my legs shook and the horizon turned from black to blue. When the sun rose over the cornfields, it felt like the first sunrise I'd ever truly seen. I followed the train tracks toward town. Every sound startled me, a crow's cry, the hiss of steam, but the fear felt different now. It was a fear that had direction. A fear that meant I was still alive. By the time I reached Maple Creek, my feet were bleeding. I must have looked like a ghost, walking barefoot past the diner windows. Folks stared, but nobody asked questions. That was how small towns were back then. They noticed everything, but spoke of nothing. I went straight to the little church whose address I'd written from that letter. The bell tower loomed over me, white paint peeling in strips. I remember standing there on the steps, shaking so hard I could barely knock. When the door opened, it was Sister Ruth, a tall, gray-haired woman with kind eyes and a voice like warm soup on a cold day. She didn't ask for details. She just looked at me and said, "You're safe here, child." That sentence. I still hear it in my dreams sometimes. Safe. It was the first time anyone had used that word with me. For the first few months, I stayed in the back room of the church, sleeping on a cot beside the pantry. I scrubbed the floors, peeled potatoes, and folded linens. The work was hard, but no one yelled, no one raised a hand. And for me, that was paradise. Still, nights were hard. I'd wake from dreams where I could hear his boots on the porch. I'd see Mama's face in the flicker of the kerosene lamp. Some nights I sat up till dawn, whispering prayers that didn't sound like the ones the church folk said. Mine were quieter, desperate. Please don't let him find me. Please don't let me turn into him. If you're listening and you've ever survived something like that, you know what I mean. The body can leave the place, but the place doesn't leave the body. A year passed. Then, too, Sister Ruth helped me get a small cleaning job at the Maple Creek boarding house. The owner, Miss Ida, was a widow with sharp eyes and a heart of gold. She paid me $1 a week and let me eat leftover pie from the guests. I started saving every penny. And for the first time, I began to plan. I didn't call it that back then. It was just a whisper in my heart. But I knew one day I'd go back. Not to live, Lord no, but to face the truth. To prove, somehow, that what he did wouldn't define me forever. When I turned 20, I changed my name. Just a little. Dropped my last name, took my mother's maiden name instead. It felt like shedding a snake's skin. People in town started calling me Ellie, short for Eleanor. I liked the sound of it. Light, like air. That same year, I met a man named Tom, kind, soft-spoken, with calloused hands from factory work. He used to fix the church roof on Sundays and bring Sister Ruth her favorite candy, peppermint sticks. He'd smile at me and say, "You've got eyes that have been through fire, Ellie." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But the past has a way of sitting in the corner, watching you. Even as I fell in love, I kept my secrets locked tight. I didn't tell him about my father. Didn't tell him about the farm or the night I ran. I just said my parents passed when I was young. And he didn't press. Maybe he knew that some truths bleed when you touch them. We got married in '61, in that same church where I'd been saved. Sister Ruth cried during the ceremony. And for a while, I thought I'd outrun it. The ghosts, the fear, the shame. But 10 years of silence builds its own kind of weight. One morning, I opened the newspaper and saw a name I hadn't seen in more than a decade. John Calhoun, my father. It was a short notice. Local farmer hospitalized after suspected poisoning from spoiled preserves. You might think I'd feel joy. I didn't. I felt trembling. Like the earth had shifted under my feet again. 4 days, I couldn't sleep. All those memories came rushing back. Mama's trembling hands, the cake on my birthday, the smell of the kitchen that night. I realized something I'd buried deep down. He wasn't just my monster. He was a man who'd never been held accountable, never been seen for what he was. And that child is where the plan started. Not to hurt him. Though Lord knows the thought crossed my mind. No. My plan was to make sure the truth wouldn't die with him. That the story of what he did to us, to my mother, to me, would be told one way or another. It began with letters. I wrote to county records, to old neighbors, to the church archives. I wanted proof, any trace of what happened. Most people didn't want to talk. Some said, "That's family business." But I kept pushing. I found Mama's death record, listed as suspected poisoning, unconfirmed. No investigation ever followed. The sheriff at the time had been my father's friend. I started visiting libraries, taking notes in a little leather book. That notebook became my new Bible. Every name, every date, every small clue that showed how silence protected monsters, I wrote it all down. If you're still watching, hit that like button for all the women who never got to tell their story. For every girl who was told to keep quiet for the family's sake. Because that's what kills us, not the pain itself, the silence. Sometimes I'd sit alone on the porch, looking at the hills beyond Maple Creek, thinking of that old farmhouse rotting under the same Ohio sky. I'd wonder if the soil remembered. If the ground still held her voice, her laughter, her tears. By then, I was 30, married, a mother myself. And I knew that to be free, truly free, I had to go back. Not for revenge, but for closure. So I packed my little notebook, told Tom I needed to visit an old family grave, and took the bus back to the town I swore I'd never see again. The ride was quiet. The sky is gray, just like that birthday morning so long ago. When I stepped off the bus, the air smelled of rain and rust. The past had been waiting for me. And that is where the Rayol story begins. Sometimes, going back isn't about revenge. It's about burying what should have died long ago, and walking away whole. If you're still here, thank you, sugar. You've got no idea how much it means to this old woman to know someone's listening. If you haven't yet, please click that like button. Not for me, but for every soul that's ever had to dig up the past just to heal. It was 1967 when I went back to that place. The bus dropped me off a mile from the old Calhoun farm, and I walked the rest of the way down that dirt road. Every step felt like walking through time. The cornfields had thinned out, and the fence posts leaned like tired old men. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Grey wood, half the roof caved in, the porch sagging like it had given up hope. I stood at the edge of the yard for a long while. My hands trembled. My throat was tight, but not with fear, with something heavier. A strange kind of pity. When I finally walked up the steps, the front door was unlocked. Inside smelled like dust, whiskey, and loneliness. I heard coughing from the next room. Deep, rattling, wet. And there he was. My father. But he wasn't the monster I'd carried in my nightmares. He was just an old man sitting in a worn-out chair, his hands shaking worse than mine. His hair was white, his skin thin as paper. When his eyes lifted and met mine, it took him a moment. Then he said, almost laughing, "Ellie? Lord Almighty. I thought you were dead." I wanted to say, "You made sure of that once already." But instead I just stood there. He tried to get up, stumbled, and reached for the table. I saw the bottle of medicine beside him, the crumpled newspaper, the photographs scattered like confessions. One of them was Mama. Her smile was still soft and kind, frozen in time before everything broke. "You came back," he said. "I came to finish something," I told him. He chuckled, that same bitter laugh I remembered from the nights he'd curse at the walls. "Ain't nothin' left to finish, girl. The world forgot us long ago." I don't know where it came from, but I found my voice. Calm. Steady. "Not anymore. I've been writing it down. Every name. Every lie. Every bruise that didn't show." He blinked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "I wrote your story," I said. "Our story. The one you buried under silence." That was my plan. The brilliant plan I'd been carrying like a secret weapon for years. I'd written everything in my leather notebook. All the truth he'd hidden, all the pain he'd caused. My plan wasn't to destroy him. It was to take away the power he'd used to destroy me. "You can't prove nothin'," he spat, voice shaking. "I don't need proof," I said softly. "I just need to tell you. Out loud." He went quiet then. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in his eyes. Not of me, but of the truth. That's the thing about men like him. They live off control, and the moment you take that away, they shrink. He started coughing again, clutching his chest. I should have felt something. Anger, satisfaction, justice. But all I felt was tired. I'm so tired. I sat down in the chair across from him and looked at that frail, shaking man who'd once filled the whole world with terror. "You don't own me anymore," I whispered. "You never did." He muttered something, maybe sorry, maybe just air, and his eyes drifted to the window. The sun had come out, thin and pale, lighting the dust that danced between us. For a moment, it looked like Mama was there too. In the light, in the quiet, in the breath I finally took without fear. I left him sitting there. Didn't take anything, didn't look back. Some things don't deserve ceremony. Back in town, I went straight to the Maple Creek Gazette. The same small office that printed wedding announcements and obituaries. The editor, a kind man named Harold, remembered my husband. He raised an eyebrow when I placed my leather notebook on his desk. "What's this?" he asked. "The truth," I said. 15 years worth. He read in silence for a long while. Then he looked up at me with tears in his eyes and said, "Miss Ellie, are you sure you want this published?" I smiled for the first time that day. I've been sure since the day my mother died. The article came out a week later. Not everything, just enough. Local woman breaks decades of silence, a daughter's story of survival. My name wasn't mentioned. I didn't need it to be. What mattered was that the truth finally had a voice. And you know what happened next. People talked. Whispers spread like wildfire through Maple Creek. Some folks called me brave. Others said I should have stayed quiet. But I didn't care. I'd done what I came to do. I'd unburied my mother's memory and laid the ghost of that house to rest. A month later, word came that he'd passed. They said he died in his sleep. I didn't go to the funeral. I'd already said my goodbye in that dusty room, when I looked him in the eye and chose not to hate him anymore. Now, when I sit here, old and grey, I think about how long it took to understand something simple. Forgiveness isn't about the person who hurt you. It's about freeing the one they left behind, you. If you're watching this, maybe you've got your own secret, your own buried story. Don't let it rot in silence. Speak it, write it, sing it. I don't care how, just let it out. And if my story touched you, please like or comment. I don't need fame, I just want to know someone heard me, that my mama's memory didn't fade into nothing. Because, child, truth is the only thing stronger than fear. And sometimes, that's the most brilliant plan of all. You've come this far with me, haven't you? If you're still listening, bless your heart. You've heard pieces of me that not even my own children know. And tonight, I'm going to tell you how it ended. How I finally stopped being afraid of a man who's been dead for 40 years. It happened on a quiet spring morning in 1981. I was 37, and the air smelled like lilacs blooming behind the old barn. I hadn't been back to that house since the night I escaped, since the night I left Mama's photograph on the kitchen table and swore I'd never step foot in that place again. But that morning, I got a call. They said the property had been sold, and someone needed to come collect what was left. Old records, family things. I don't know why I said yes. Maybe curiosity. Maybe closure. Maybe God knew I couldn't move forward until I went back. When I pulled up the dirt road, everything looked smaller. The trees were thinner, the porch more crooked. The swing my father built was still hanging, rusted chains squeaking in the wind. I remember standing there for a long time, staring at the front door. My hands were shaking. My heart was too. Inside, the air was heavy. The same wallpaper, the same smell. Mold and sadness. The floor creaked like it remembered me. Every step felt like walking through old ghosts. I found Mama's teacup still on the shelf. The one with the tiny blue roses she loved. And then I saw it. The old Bible. His Bible. I thought about burning it right there, but something stopped me. I sat down on that same kitchen floor, the one I used to scrub with my bare hands, and opened it. Inside the cover, written in his handwriting, was a single verse. Be sure your sin will find you out. I laughed and cried at the same time. Because it had. It found him. He died alone, sick and bitter, the same way he lived. But me. I lived long enough to tell the story. To breathe again. To laugh again. To love again. That's when I realized something. I didn't need to hate him anymore. Hate had been eating me from the inside, like poison that outlived its maker. Forgiveness wasn't for him. It was for me. So I said it out loud, right there in that kitchen. I forgive you. But you will never own me again. And I swear to you, child, the air shifted. The light came through that window just right. For the first time in my life, I felt free. I sold the land a week later. Took the money and opened a small sewing shop in town. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I stitched quilts for the ladies from church, made dresses for little girls, the kind I never got to wear. Every piece of fabric felt like another page in my healing. Years passed. My hair turned gray, my hands wrinkled. But every scar faded into a story I could tell without shaking. And now, here I am, 79 years old, sitting in front of this little camera, talking to strangers who somehow feel like family. Because if my pain can reach just one person, if one young girl out there hears my voice and decides to walk away sooner than I did, then my life, all this hurt, will have meant something. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's quiet, like folding an old letter and letting it rest. So if you're listening, my dear, don't carry someone else's sins your whole life. Don't let their cruelty become your identity. You are not what they did to you. You are what you choose to do next. I chose peace. I chose love. I chose me. If you felt this story, if you've carried pain like mine, leave a little heart, maybe a comment, and tell me I'm not alone. Because for a long, long time, I thought I was. But I see now, I never was. None of us are. You know. I used to think silence was my enemy. For so many years, it held all my secrets, locked tight in a chest I was too afraid to open. But now, I see silence differently. It's not the absence of sound. It's the place where truth finally breathes. I told my story because the ghosts were growing restless. They whispered in my sleep, in the creak of the floorboards, in the hush between heartbeats. And one morning, I realized, I was never meant to carry them alone. So, I opened my mouth and let the years spill out like river water. Muddy at first, heavy with the silt of old pain. But as I spoke, the current cleared, and I could finally see the bottom, the small, shining stones of who I used to be. You ask why now? Because the woman I am today finally feels strong enough to cradle the girl I once was. For a long time, I hated her, for being afraid, for staying quiet, for surviving. But now I hold her close and whisper, "You did the best you could, child." And that's enough. If you've listened this far, if you've carried my words in your heart, thank you. Maybe you saw a reflection of your own hurt in mine. Maybe you've been waiting for a sign to tell your truth too. Well, consider this it. To every survivor out there, I see you. You are not broken. You are reforged. Your cracks are where the light gets in, and your story is not shameful. It's evidence of strength. She smiles softly, tears glimmering like light through glass. If this story touched you, even a little, leave me a small sign. A heart, a word, a whisper in the comments below. Because connection is how we heal. And maybe, just maybe, it'll reach someone who still believes they're alone in the dark. As for me, I think this is where I set it down. Not the pain, but the telling of it. I've carried it far enough, and now it belongs to time, to memory, to you. My name, the one my father gave me, doesn't feel like mine anymore. So tonight, I'll just be Grace. Because grace is what it took to survive. And grace is what I leave behind. She looks into the lens, steady, unflinching. I hope you find peace, wherever you are. I hope you speak your truth, even if your voice shakes. And when the storm passes, I hope you stand barefoot in the quiet, and know, you are still here. This is Grace, signing off. Thank you for listening. The story is over now. But the healing, it's just beginning.